Hey everybody, here we are at the 4th episode of the SHFT Hockey Podcast already. I'm Jory Elliott, thanks for being here. This episode's conversation is one I've really been excited to share with everyone since we recorded it a few weeks back. Stephanie Sluys, or Slousy as we called her during her playing days at the University of Waterloo, has accomplished just about everything there was for her to do as a female goaltender playing in USports. She won Rookie of the Year honors in the OUA Conference her first season in the league and was named to the All-Rookie team. She was twice named Team MVP while at Waterloo and was an academic All-Canadian all 4 years of her undergrad. She won the Marsden Trophy as Female Athlete of the Year at the University of Waterloo in 2017, and she was awarded the Shield of Excellence Award in 2018 for outstanding contribution to sport, academics, and community service at the University of Waterloo. And in the midst of doing all that, she represented Team Canada at the FISU Games in Kazakhstan in 2017, bringing home a silver medal for her efforts. I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to coach Slousy for the better part of 2 seasons, and there's no doubt that she influenced my development path as a coach in an incredibly positive way, something I'll always be thankful for. In this podcast, she talks about her path from minor hockey in rural Ontario, where she started out playing with boys, to her junior career in the PWHL, and how being close to home so her mom could watch her play in person had a big impact on her decision to play hockey at the University of Waterloo. Slousy was a difference maker for her team during the years I coached with and against her in USports, and watching her perform at her best when it meant the most to her team in the playoffs will always stand among the best performances I have seen in person from an athlete for as long as I'm a coach. So, let's get this one rolling, shall we? Here's my conversation with Stephanie Sluys on the SHFT Hockey Podcast. Thanks again for listening, and enjoy. All right, this is episode 4. I am so happy to have Steph Sluys with us today. Steph and I know each other from the University of Waterloo. We also have a way back connection from the town that we both went to high school in, Clinton, Ontario. And I just think that's one of the cool things that hockey gives us in life is things we don't expect. And Steph's a long time UW goalie, now graduated and fighting fires, serving her community in Whitby, and played for the KW Rangers and Durham during her junior career, and then 4 years at the University of Waterloo, where I don't know if we have time to list all the things that you accomplished when you were there, but it's a pretty impressive resume, from OUA Rookie of the Year to Female Athlete of the Year for the university, and I think you were an academic All-Canadian every year there, right? And it's a long list. So let's just jump into, we know where you're from, where you grew up in Clinton, but tell us where you are now, and then just kind of loop back to that beginning of how you got involved in hockey, what that looked like, and when you started playing goal.
Yeah, so I grew up on a dairy farm in Clinton, Ontario, back to Jory's roots as well. And now I've made the move to Peterborough, Ontario, which is a little ways away from home, but we're making it home for now. And jumped to fighting fires for the town of Whitby, which is pretty cool. Didn't see myself there when I started university, but happy I'm here now. So hockey began pretty early for me. I think when I was about 3 or 4. I have an older brother. He started playing hockey pretty young, And so I'm first generation Canadian. So both my parents came from Holland. And when my brother approached them to play hockey, it was kind of like, well, what do you need? We're used to soccer. You grab a pair of cleats and you go out there. So we had some good family friends that hooked my brother up with some gear. And as soon as I saw him play, I knew immediately that I wanted to play. Started out as the worst skater on the team. So I was stuck in the net because I couldn't skate. And that's kind of how that started. And then my mom made me take power skating and hated every minute of it, but became a really good skater. So they kind of wanted me to play out, started playing center and just using my skating ability. But then my brother stuck to playing goalie. So I saw him, of course, I wanted to do what he was doing. So I jumped back in the net, and that's kind of how that all started for me.
And what age was that at? Because I know there's a lot of talk about, playing out and the value of that as a kid, and then being a goalie for every single opportunity you get to go on the ice. And it's changing so much right now, I think.
Yeah.
But what age were you when you decided that goaltending was what you were going to do?
I was definitely Adam when I decided goalie was what I wanted to do. But even, I know back in my day we had Mite and Tyke. I don't know what the age groups are anymore. But it was definitely then that I wanted it, but they still kind of rotated through just because the value of getting out there, skating, and obviously you're a little young to know exactly what you want. But yeah, definitely Adam is when I stuck to the net.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common theme too. And even now with Hockey Canada, they're starting to, they want those players to play out in the games that they're not starting, right? And it'll be interesting to see how that goes, because there's lots of things that go into goaltending that don't necessarily set the kids up for success as a skater at that level, but see how it goes. I think it's good to have all those different experiences. Like you said, you had, skating, and then your parents made you go to power skating so you could be a better skater. And I did the same as a goalie. I was a little bit older, but that's kind of the path. And then they go, okay, now you're good enough, so we want you to play out, but you're like, but I really love goalie. So it's good to have all those experiences and know, this is what I really want to do. I want to be a goalie. I know that there's girls hockey. There wasn't when I was growing up in that area. So what was your experience like for minor hockey, the opportunities to play with boys and girls, or just on girls teams, and kind of how did that go?
So it's actually kind of cool because I was recently home visiting my mom, and she did a pretty good job scrapbooking kind of all my childhood hockey. And it was cool to go through in the sense that there was me and one other girl. We were actually born on the exact same day. And we went all the way from when we were like 3 or 4 through to midget together playing hockey. So all our pictures are together. But we played boys hockey together until Pee Wee. So all the way from about 3 to, I don't know how old you are in Pee Wee, but first year Pee Wee.
Yep. 12, 11, 12.
Yeah. And so it was nice as a female having another female on the team. When you're younger, it didn't really matter. They're our friends. You change with them, you play with them. It didn't really matter. And as you got older, we kind of got stuck in the closets, the old referee rooms, you name it, the hallway, wherever we could find a spot to get dressed.
Yep.
But it was kind of nice having a bit of a partner in crime for that. And as we got older, it kind of changed from the boys being like our friends to them being our brothers. And if anyone tried to hurt us, they were out to get them. I had a great experience playing boys hockey, and I actually found the transition from boys to women's hockey quite difficult. Just because at that stage, I switched in Pee Wee, and at that time, I think the boys were just developing faster, so they they could shoot harder. They were skating a little bit faster. I think the girls were better at stick handling and those sorts of things. But the game for me in boys hockey was a bit faster and the shots were harder. So it almost felt like taking a step back for me. And I went from kind of like local, we called it BCH, so Bayfield, Clinton, Hensel.
Yeah.
To then I moved on to Saugeen Maitland, and it was Pee Wee A, my second year of Pee Wee. But yeah, it was still felt like it was missing something, and I don't think it was until I moved up to Bantam that I was like, okay, like this is better.
Right. Yeah, and I can totally grasp the understanding behind that. I think we're getting to a point now with the female game where thankfully we have social media has played an amazing role in this, but creating those role models and people for female hockey players to look up to. And I think the boys always had a deeper obsession with training. And so their training accelerates because they spend a lot of time at home kind of working on that stuff. And that's just kind of the human nature, right? As you see where you want to go to and it's easy to put time into it. But for the females, you guys never really had that on a large enough scale. And now females are at the all-star game for the NHL and they've got their own league and there's a lot of buzz around what's going on, and they're re-airing world championships and Olympic games and stuff on TV. And that's so important for females to be able to see their role models, because I think it just contributes to your excitement about doing that thing, practicing for it and making time for it on your own. And it doesn't necessarily allow the two groups to be separated by as much anymore, because everybody's sort of chasing the same dream, right? Which is,
Exactly.
it's amazing. That it's really interesting that you say that, because I know at the university, I try and encourage the goalies now to, if there's an opportunity, go skate with the men's team. If they're on at 10 a.m. and they're messing around and they need a shooter or something. And it's an intimidating thought because they're at such a different level there. They've come back from playing in the OHL, so they're, high-end players, and you guys are too, but there's a big separation when you get to a certain point. And I think that gap is narrowing because of the opportunity for young girls. There's more organized hockey for them, and there's more people to look up to that are going to sort of show them the way, I guess would be the best way to say it.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that you say that, because actually this past summer, I was in Waterloo quite a bit, and I'd play shinny with a bunch of like pro players or ex-pro players from Europe that needed a goalie. They'd play shinny, they wanted a half-decent goalie, and I was really nervous at first because I'm like, well, these are like pro, ex-pro European men's players. I'm like, haven't played serious hockey in probably a year or two. I'm a little rusty, and I was just like, and I don't know, I was like, and I played women's hockey, it's a little bit different. But took a few skates, but once I got comfortable, it just flowed, and you just got into the game, and it was kind of nice. They were actually kind of impressed. They were like, you can come to Europe with us. Like,
and that's the reality of it. When if you have the skill, so if you can puck handle, you can puck handle. If you can skate, you can skate. If you're a goalie and you understand the concepts behind playing the position, you can do that. You're just going to need an adjustment period for reaction time and reading the shots. And the male players do a lot of funky things where they're pulling pucks and pushing pucks, and they're really good at disguising shots, it just comes from what we were talking about before, with more time spent messing around with that stuff. That's all it is. It's not that females aren't capable of those things. It's just the time investment on a guy's level is obsessive, whereas the female level hasn't got there yet. It's definitely happening, and there are players who have just been obsessive about it without all of those things in place, and they're the ones who have had great success. I think that's really funny, because I had a moment like that too, where I was done school, moved to London, and put my name on the list for sub goalies, and it was like a page long of goalies, but the person at the rink put my name at the top, so I was the first call. And I went out with a bunch of guys who played in the OHL and Junior B, and I was rusty. It wasn't terrible, but it was the moment where I realized, like, this might not be fun anymore.
Yeah.
Because they were just at a different pace than I was, because they had all been playing competitively, and it was literally like some shinny for them. So it's really cool that, you know, to understand that if you build put the tools in the toolbox to be a goalie or a skater, you can go and play with anyone. It's just a matter of comfort at that point.
Exactly. Comfort and confidence. That's a big one, I think.
Yeah. Not being, it comes down to not being afraid of putting yourself in a situation like that, which is confidence, and just being like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go and do my best. See how it goes, right? And hopefully it doesn't end in some catastrophic thing, but it more than likely won't. It's just you have to go outside your comfort zone a little bit, and I think that's what separates the haves from the have-nots in the hockey world a little bit, is the ones that just say, you know what, I'm willing to go outside my comfort zone, or I'm willing to listen to this, or I'm willing to try that. Or when you kind of get pigeonholed into like, no, this is the way I've always done it, that's pretty much the end of your days improving as a player. So while you were playing hockey growing up, what other sports were you playing? And at what point did you decide or realize or have somebody say to you, like, hey, now it's time to just focus on goalie stuff more seriously than anything else?
I don't think I ever really had that you just need to focus on goalie stuff. When I was younger, there was an FCC, so it's a farming bank, the Farmers Credit something.
Yeah.
They had a big meeting in Toronto where they brought in a bunch of speakers, and on the list there was Haley Wickenheiser, and I was like, Dad, I'm coming with you. I'm going to that. And so we went and waited in the long line to, wear her medal and get a chance to talk to her and get the signature. And one of the things she told me, which has kind of always stuck with me, is the power of playing multiple sports and being versatile. So I feel like a lot of athletes in general, and maybe I have a different perspective than other people, but they get, I don't want to say pigeonholed into one thing. I am only a goalie, or I am only a centerman. Whereas if you can play soccer, there's skills that transfer, and just being able to read the game, see the field. There's things that transfer within that sport to hockey or whatever sport it may be. It's just, I don't know, an athlete's mind, if you can push it a little bit, whether it's in hockey, basketball, I think there's great value in being versatile and playing different sports. And a lot of skills are transferable.
Yeah, it's a huge one, I think. And whether you know it or not, in the moment, you are picking up different skills that transfer to other sports. Yeah.
And there's always a risk of injury, which was a big thing for me. So growing up, I played soccer. My family's Dutch. That wasn't really a choice. That was more of a, you're playing soccer. And then I got to high school, and Jan, my brother, played rugby. Saw what he was doing. I liked that idea. And I had a big conversation with my mom. I said, like, I really want to play rugby, but I play competitive hockey. Like, this is just high school sport. And she told me, she's like, well, you can fall down these steps and break your leg. If you play scared, you're going to get hurt. So played
Great
rugby
advice.
And played basketball in high school. It's kind of like, you name it, I give it a shot. But rugby turned out to be a big one, so I went on and kind of pursued rugby quite competitively as well. I had to make a big decision in my high school years whether to try out for Team Ontario or play competitive rugby in the summer. And I decided to play competitive rugby, which was good and bad all at the same time. I think in terms of hockey, it maybe took away some opportunities from me, but it gave me other opportunities in rugby that I wouldn't have had. So I don't regret the decisions I've made, but I think there's power in being versatile and being a multi-sport athlete.
Yeah. So what you said about, rugby and where we grew up, we didn't have girls high school hockey, right? So, but it's a similar situation where in the city, the girls have high school hockey and it's not nearly as serious as their club team. But it's a great opportunity to connect with their other friends and from a different place and have some amazing experiences together and play against some higher caliber players. So making those decisions, the most important thing to remember is that there is no one way. We talked about it before we started recording, right? Like you choose your way, just be aware that you can change that down the road. So, at some point you chose hockey over rugby. That's how it went, right?
Yep.
Or the opportunities presented themselves and you said, okay, I'm going to go this way. And that's okay. Like everybody's going to navigate it differently. I think it's just the trade-off. At some point you acknowledge that, I'm putting a lot of effort into this and it's taking away from that. And if that's how you feel, then you need to maybe make a decision and go one way or the other. So yeah, we're talking about high school and kind of you're making some decisions about how am I going to navigate through this? I love rugby. You made a choice to not go to a hockey opportunity so that you could pursue rugby. And that's a big decision in high school for sure. At what point did you start to think about junior hockey or maybe university, and how did that affect what you were doing and the decisions you were making? Or did somebody just walk up to you one day and go like, hey, we've got a spot opening on our junior team next year and we'd like for you to fill it?
So my midget coach was kind of phenomenal in presenting opportunities and not pushing us towards those opportunities, but making us aware of opportunities beyond just simply playing hockey. I don't think I really started thinking about university hockey or the potential to play beyond midget until I was actually in midget. It was in my second year of midget that my coach is like, you have a decent shot at something here. And he's that's when kind of presented their Kitchener Waterloo KW Rangers were looking for a goalie and you were on their list, and we're playing whatever it was, Kitchener on Saturday. Like after the game, they want to talk to you and just, yeah. And so it's kind of, I didn't realize those opportunities were out there. Not until it was too late, but it was cutting it close for me. And that's why I think this is a great idea to present young female goaltenders with the opportunities that are out there. There's definitely hockey beyond high school, beyond university, for females now, which is a great opportunity. But it's hard when you don't know of those opportunities until they're there or until it's too late.
Yeah, you're really lucky, I think. And generally at those levels, at midget AA, those coaches understand what their role is to help the players who are capable or want to move on. But you're talking like you're 15 or 16 years old and you're just finding out about going to play junior hockey.
Yeah.
Boys already are like, they sleep with their gear at night dreaming of the day they get drafted at 16 to go play junior hockey. So it's two different worlds, and that's why it's so important or valuable that we have this conversation and you can share that, hey, we're going to start with those wheels turning a little bit sooner And hopefully when you get to midget, you're asking your coach, hey, I'm interested in playing junior. What do I need to do? How can you help me? Well, how can I navigate that? I think that's a really important thing for them to hear.
Well, like another thing too is I feel like a lot of females don't even look at it this way, but when you think about it, like the PWHL is the equivalent to the OHL for females. And that's a huge accomplishment in itself. And it's something that's very attainable, but you kind of need your sights set on it early enough to work towards that goal. But it's definitely attainable and it's out there. But just knowing about it is one thing, right? Because it's not, I don't know, growing up, I didn't know what the PWHL was or anything of that sort.
Yeah, and I think that's the most valuable thing about all of this, what we're talking about is that the discovery of what's there and how special that is to go and play in that league. I think it's taken for granted because it doesn't have the same attention that a boys league does. Just there's not, it's parents showing up to watch PWHL game, not 5,000 people filling the Kitchener Auditorium, but the enthusiasm and the ability and everything, like the commitment, it's all there. It's all the same.
Yeah.
And the number of spaces that are there for the number of players that want to play at that level are limited. So if you've made it to that point, you've done something. You've accomplished something that a lot of female hockey players will never accomplish. And I think that's a great goal to have. If you're playing hockey, say that's where I want to get to. But we're going beyond that today because you went and you played junior and you played for two different teams. And I want to know at what point. So you're saying I got to midget AA, and in my second year, all of a sudden, coach is like, hey, this team wants to watch you play and they're interested in you going to play there. Did it go similar when you made that first junior team and you're going to Stony Creek Showcase or whatever, and they're like, okay, there's going to be a bunch of people here watching you, trying to figure out if they want you to play for them? Like, how did that happen for you? Because obviously it was happening fast. You went from just learning about junior to playing junior to now all of a sudden you're 1 year away from graduating high school and we got to make a decision about what's next.
Yeah, I feel like at those showcase tournaments, it was everyone went in with the assumption that it's a big tournament. You got to play your best. There's people watching, especially if you want to make it to that next step. Which for me at the time of playing my first year of junior, I didn't really know what my next step was. I was just kind of having fun at the time. Same thing. I didn't really know where this was going to take me. But it was kind of, people are watching, you want to put your best foot forward. And for me, I don't know if I was just too easygoing about the situation, but I was just like, I'm still having fun. I'm just going to play. I'm going to show up, play, and kind of see what happens.
Well, and in the end, that's all you can do, right? Regardless of who's watching or what situation you're in, that's what goalies in the NHL have to do. Show up and play. I trust that I'm here because I want to be here, and away we go. So let's kind of come at it from a different angle then. So you're going to these tournaments, there's people watching. Have you had a conversation or thought about, you're obviously thinking about going to university because you're graduating high school and you've got some ideas of what you want to take. Has there been a conversation, or have you talked to your coach, or does your coach bring something up that says, hey, here are your options: NCAA, Division I, Division III, there's a Northern Ontario League, there's the CIS, there's whatever. Like, where were you at that point as far as your knowledge of what your options were to move on?
So it was probably within that time that I feel that when you're in the PWHL, the big push is NCAA Division I. That's what everyone wants. And I think at first I wanted that too, just because that's what the talk is. That's the show at the time. And so you go to a few showcase tournaments, you talk with a few coaches, you get a few emails after the tournament. But looking back, it was they're probably talking to 20 goalies. But you don't know that. You feel like gold after getting that email, and maybe you get 3 or 4 after each tournament, and you reply and they reply. You talk back and forth for a little bit, and it's probably wrapping up midway through my first junior season, and people are signing, and you're getting a little nervous because you don't know whether you're going to stick around a year, whether you're going off to school. I applied to some universities here just to kind of cover my basis. And but my first year of junior, I was pretty dead set on going NCAA. And I had no other reason for it other than that's what everyone else wanted. And I guess I wanted that too, just because everyone else did. It was the talk.
Yep.
And that's why I'm actually really happy that I played another year of junior.
Right.
So nothing really materialized that year for me. I had an okay season. We were an okay team. So I kind of, in terms of goaltending, finished probably mid-pack, and our team finished mid-pack. So nothing like really standing out. A lot of these teams are simply just looking at stats. So You play for a better team, your stats are probably going to be better.
Yep.
So I had the opportunity to play for Durham West. They were looking to recruit another goalie and promised quite a bit of ice time, and I like ice time.
Yep.
So I made the move there in my second year of junior, and that's kind of when more things started to happen for me. And that's kind of when I realized, not that I moved super far from home, but I'm in my 5th year of high school, taking a victory lap, trying to figure things out, moved away from home, 3.5 hours from home, living with a different family, kind of figuring things out. And I'm someone that loves family at games. I love looking up in the stands and seeing my mom or my sister. And that's when I realized I don't want to fly 7 hours away to go play hockey somewhere. I'd love my family to be there at as many games as they could. So that's when my priorities kind of shifted. Gotcha. And CIS became kind of where I was really looking to go.
Yeah, and I think there's a great lesson there. So talking to Michaela Schnarr yesterday or the day before, and she mentioned about the recruiting process for NCAA too, and how they told her at one point, you're in our second pool of goalies. And it's just the reality of what it is down there. Whereas when you look at the CIS and everybody who's played in the CIS, even players who come back from the US, say that the quality of the hockey from top to bottom, players on the first line to players on the fourth line, is far more competitive than in the US, where you've got 1 or 2 lines that are just amazing, and then 2 lines that are like, they're whatever. You could stuff anyone in there. And that's not to take anything away from those players, but that's kind of how they build their teams. Whereas the CIS is like, we're taking the best of whatever's left. Everything that hasn't gone to the US is going to the CIS. And so you get that depth of skill all the way through lineups. And I think that's like you said, NCAA is all the talk. It's the rage. It was like the show. It was like going to the show, right? And so much is missed out, and not directing a goalie one way or the other. But I think that the experience you can have in Canada from a competitive standpoint, from like the facilities at UW and so many other schools are phenomenal. You're on the ice every day. You've got your own facility attached at UW where you can go get your aches and pains worked out, and they've got cold tubs, and you got your own dressing room, and like, it's just the experience is no different. And I think that's there might be a few more people watching at an NCAA game because they're nuts about sports down there. But for the athlete, the experience is very similar. Plus, you get the advantage of your mom could drive to every game, and your sister could come from Hamilton to watch. And like it was for you, for somebody who's thinking about, I want to continue to share this experience with the people that have helped me get there or that I care about the most. That is a hugely beneficial part to staying close to home and going.
I think too, a part of it was I'm super academic. So when I also look in terms of, you have to, when you're thinking about university, like what are your priorities? Growing up, I heard not horror stories, but a few players that say I took kinesiology at Waterloo. So say they were taking kinesiology in the States. Their classes maybe happened to be at the same time as practice time. Well, hockey was the priority.
Right.
So they weren't able to take their kinesiology classes, so they couldn't get their kinesiology degree.
Wow.
So, and I'm sure it varies school to school, but very much here is education is a priority. And when you walk away from this, what do you want? Do you want a phenomenal 4 years of hockey, or do you want a phenomenal 4 years of hockey and potentially a great degree?
Yeah. And I know there's some challenges for crossover if you want to do a post-grad. Trying to come back from the US with a degree from certain schools is a little bit challenging, and it's getting better. But for sure, the transition from high school to a degree that's going to be very valuable to you to the work world, and the connections that you make and the network of people that you have to support you when you're done school is way more powerful here too. That's something that I think, I can't imagine the NCAA experience is terrible. But when you look at the long play, the quality of the hockey and the ability to have a great experience on that side is very similar. So then it comes down to the other things, the intangible things that are important to you. So what do I want along the road? And that's hard for a 17 or 18-year-old going into university to be like, well, when I'm 25, what do I, you're not thinking that. But just,
I sat down with one of my high school teachers and coaches, and we created a pros and cons list for going to the States so NCAA versus CIS.
Yeah.
Because I was so torn. I wanted the hockey so bad because everyone did. But I also wanted a great degree and family there and great hockey. And I was very torn for a long time. And I'd revisit this pros and cons list all the time when I was trying to make a decision.
I've been there. I think it's a pros and cons list. If the way I always looked at pros and cons lists is build it, so write stuff down, and then step away from it, and then come back to it and look at it again and be like that one really jumps off the page at me, right? That one's got to go to the top of the list. And it's such a valuable, anything in life, you can sit down and say, these are the things that are important to me. But if you step away and come back to it, you're going to really realize like that thing means the most, or this thing means the most. And I'm sure that you did that through that process of like, here's all the things that are just coming out. This is what it feels like. And then you feel some things more strongly than others.
Exactly. You get that feeling and you know what's right.
Yeah, exactly. So you're playing for Durham. You're deciding like CIS is more along the lines of what I'm feeling. That's where I want to go. Who's coming and knocking on your door? Is there multiple schools? Are you sending emails or letters to coaches? Is your head coach helping you do that? Like kind of go through that process of finding UW where you ended up.
Yeah, so my head coach was, again, phenomenal coach at Durham. And I look back and I don't know if I was maybe too complacent in the whole process. I wasn't really one of those people that were emailing every coach. I was more someone that's just kind of sat back and hoped something happened in the process, which I maybe regret that a little bit. Maybe I should have been a little more aggressive in trying to contact schools and get my name out there, because I know people that have done that and have been successful in getting to where they wanted to go. And at the end of the day, I guess I was just hoping for something to happen.
I think you ended up in a great situation, but there's talking to other goalies, they're talking about like researching all the teams and who's got a fourth year goalie that might be moving on. And there's a ton that can go into like, how am I going to get a spot? Because you're one goalie coming from a league where now you're going into a pool of, if you want to stay close to home in Ontario, 11 teams. So there's 22 goalies and there's 11 starting goalies, and it narrows that field pretty quickly. And then who's got a graduating starting goalie? So you ended up with your approach getting into a pretty good spot. But even still to UW, you were going into a situation where there was a goalie who had established herself as the starting goalie. So you had to go into that with a different expectation, I guess, than maybe if you had been looking, the expectation might have been different than what you had just being casual and going like, if an opportunity presents itself and the school is a good fit, then I'm gonna go.
Yeah, that was exactly kind of the approach I took. So I would say within that final year, I was maybe contacted by 4 or 5 of those schools within Ontario, within the OUA. I think some were more just curious, kind of, they put it out there. I don't know how serious they were. And some I definitely didn't want to go to. School like very, very north that I wasn't very interested in. And super east, which I feel like the school needs to be a good fit and the coaching staff needs to be a good fit. At least for me, I don't want to go to a school or a program that a coach has a different vision than what I have for where I see myself on the team, as well as the location, the campus. I toured a few campuses where I'm a country girl and I showed up and I'm like, I do not fit in here. So I think it was the combination. And so for Waterloo, for example, when Reegs got in touch with me, I didn't even think there was a spot on the team, because when I looked at the roster, that they were set in their goaltending, or what appeared to be set in their goaltending. So I guess you never really know, right? And whether you reach out or a team reaches out to you, I think you should definitely kind of investigate that opportunity and see if it's a fit for you, or see if it's a potential, and not write it off. Because as soon as I got contacted, I looked at the roster and I'm like, but how? they have 3 goalies, and team situations change and things like that. So keep an open mind through the process.
I think that's the best advice you can give anyone is, you never know what's going to happen. There's so many things that can go into how a journey unfolds that we can never think about. We're never going to be able to predict it all. So just do what feels right to you. You went about it a certain way, and it ended up benefiting you in a really great way in the end with all the things that you got out of it. You never could have imagined that when you were sitting there with your guidance counselor or your high school teacher doing pros and cons. You couldn't. You can do your best, and that's it. So I think that's a really great thing for them to hear, is that, like, be true to how you feel and who you are and how it feels right to go about it. But don't be afraid to take some chances, I guess, or like be confident and comfortable with who you are and how you want to do it, and good things will happen. If you're putting that out there, it'll just happen for you.
I think that's a great point too. Like, be true to who you are and be true to what you want. just because everyone else wants something doesn't mean deep down that you also want it. And it may take a little, like if you want to go to the NCAA, by all means, you can achieve that. You can do that, but make sure it's what you want and not what your brother, sister, mom, dad, coach, best friend want.
Yeah. Such an important thing to understand. And it's hard to understand too when you're younger, because we really do rely on our parents a lot to guide us, and all of the older role models that we have to guide us. But in the end, you can feel it inside, like that feels good, that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to let guide you in those moments when you're uncertain, or you feel like, that doesn't feel like me. That's not where I want to go. Why do I feel that way? Well, it's because all the outside forces are pushing you to go that way, and you're going, this doesn't feel nice. And maybe you just need to do more discovery on that topic. Like, why am I feeling I don't want to go to the NCAA? Is it an unknown? Is it, that I'm going to miss my family? Is it, what are those things? Like, you did the pros and cons, and right away it becomes clear what the main points of value are for you in your life, and what you need out of that experience. So I think, it's three different experiences as far as, what you went through, what Michaela went through, and what Morgan, who I talked to on Saturday, went through, to end up in similar situations playing university hockey. And I think that's the most valuable lesson, is that it's your journey. You choose how it goes, and be comfortable with, just do your best every day. Whatever you do, you're doing your best. I want to ask you about training. So coming up through junior, and when we're kids, we just play a lot of sports. That's training, right? So you're running around playing soccer, basketball, rugby, whatever. And then at some point, somebody says to you, okay, and I want to know what point this was for you. Was it when you got to the university? Was it when you got to junior? Somebody says, all right, it's time to think about what your body needs from a training perspective to be better as a goalie. Because we know there's, certain things, hips and reaction time, and like all kinds of stuff that goes into being a goalie that you can train. And so what point did you find out, yeah, I should probably do that?
It was in high school. I think it was about grade 10, where I had a good friend, and this is kind of like, she's like, yeah, I work out before like school. I go to this gym. I was like, you work out before school? Like, do some, like, I don't know, push-ups in the basement or something, but like, what's like, you work out before school? And I was kind of like looked up to it, and it was kind of like a CrossFit style gym. Small town, you don't really have many options.
Yep.
And so I went the first day with her, and it's like, yeah, I really like this. And so probably right from grade 10 all the way to my like year 5+ or whatever, I trained pretty hard, and that coach was actually really good at programming for me. My program was a little bit different. He programmed for me in season, off season, while I was away for Durham West. And I think that's where like a big portion of my fitness base came from, and actually my love of fitness, part of my kinesiology degree, it really stemmed all the way from high school. And I think the sooner you can start with having that base fitness, and understanding training principles, and goaltenders should have a bit of a different program than players, with a little more focus on hips, knees, those sorts of things. But just, you got to start somewhere, but the sooner you start, I think the better off you are.
Yeah. So the whole point is you kind of lucked into it, because your friend said, hey,
Yeah.
I'm doing this. And you said, oh yeah, I mean, sounds different from what I'm doing, but I'll give it a try. And then all of a sudden you're in a whole different world where you're like, wow. And it guided you down a path for life, where you're like, wow, I really like understanding how this can benefit me and the things that it can do. And, not necessarily telling anyone they have to do something specific, but just understanding that, what, you're a goalie and your body has to work differently, and the expectations of your body are different when you're on and, your team gets hemmed in your own end, and you're responsible for being attentive the entire time, and your body's engaged in that process, and your mind, that's different from players who are switching, every 45 seconds or a minute. And so if you're training the same as a skater, you're not properly prepared for what you're going to do. And then there's all the mechanics of your body, obviously. But it's interesting that you say, like, it was, a grade 10, right around that age where you should be thinking about doing something specific for your sport, and somebody just said to you, hey, I do this, and you're like, sure, let's try it.
Yeah.
And I'd prefer that kids understand it, from 13 in that range, where they're like, I need this, what, my hips, like, especially for girls, I've noticed coaching them that, and even when we worked together, like, you had one hip that was way more mobile than the other, and you did different things on each post because of that. And I noticed, the girls, when they get into the high school years, their bodies are changing. Boys are too, but the hips become a really important issue for them, where they need to put some focus in. And I think just knowing that ahead of time is going to prevent injury. Also make it far more enjoyable to play the position, because you're going to be able to do the things that you want to do. But it's virtually an unknown. Like,
Oh, exactly.
I'm teaching them stuff, and they're like, that bothers my hip. And I'm like, okay, here's what we need to do. We're not doing that anymore. We need to focus on something else before we go into that again.
And I think
it's
more
just an unknown, right? Like, people don't know that you can do that with your body and change the way it reacts in certain situations.
Yeah, like, I think more and more that training, off ice training and mobility and strength training is occurring, and that's going to give players a little bit of an edge, because I even know when I showed up in my first year, and there's a few of my, like, the other rookies, they never really worked out in the gym per se. I was like, what do you mean you don't know what a front squat is? And, like, to me, that was so foreign, because I'd been already doing it for 3-4 years consistently. But just to have that base, and especially as a goalie, like, that mobility is huge, but you need strength in those vulnerable positions, so that you can move, and you do have power to move side to side in those positions.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing, is understanding that you are putting your body, like, it feels normal. It doesn't feel uncomfortable or anything when you're a little kid. But when your body starts to change, or you get a bit older, you realize that what you're doing as a goalie is not, your body doesn't like that. That's not normal. So knowing that you can get into those positions and be supported from a strength perspective is so important. And I know that's Maria Mountain, who does goalie training. That's what she talks about all the time, is it's like, you have to be able to have that range and strength all together. You can't just train for brute strength, and you can't just train for range. You got to have both to be able to be successful as a goalie and prevent getting injured. That's probably the number one thing, is, have that support, so that you're not just beating the crap out of one part of your body the entire time, like I did when I was a kid growing up.
Well, you even look at probably most UW goalies, or maybe I just know between Rebecca and I, when we played, between, like, hips, back, groin, like, there was always one of us hurting somewhere. And, like, yeah, a part of it was probably just the sheer volume of being on the ice. But a lot of that maintenance, recovery, preventative comes from all the off ice stuff, which is huge.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of looking at minor hockey. So you got a couple practices a week. You play one game on the weekend, and the other goalie plays the other game, and so you're not repeated. You have recovery time, and you're not repeatedly beating the crap out of your body, which is generally what it comes down to. when you get to university, you're on the ice every day if you're at a spot like UW. And then it becomes a matter of, and it's something that, is hard to teach because it's a big change all of a sudden. You're on the ice and you've always been like, I don't take reps off. I'm always trying to stop every puck. And I've got this mentality of like, those reps are valuable. And now all of a sudden you're in an environment, and I know we talked about it a bit, like a pitch count for a pitcher. So on this drill, just stay on your feet and focus on catching pucks and putting rebounds in good places with your blocker or corralling them or whatever it is. And I think that, that's what happens when you get to a certain point where you're on the ice every day, is that your body, that's when you find out that it wasn't built to do what you're doing as a goalie. You can get away with it at a lesser amount of repetitions, but once you start doing that every day, and early on in your university career, you're navigating, living away from home, eating a different diet, trying to do these university programs where they're trying to weed out the weaker ones, like all this stuff.
Yeah.
So your brain is tired and everything. And I think even when you're in minor hockey, you can still gain a lot from good diet, good sleep, drink enough water, do a little bit of position specific training. Don't necessarily take reps off in practice because they're valuable to you for growing in your ability as a goalie, and you're not doing enough that's going to crush you. But all the other stuff you do that leads up to being on the ice is so important. And it's something that I don't think enough young goalies probably understand, because when you're young, you don't know. You have no idea. You can just plow through everything and you'll be fine, right? But there is a performance advantage to those who think about that stuff at a younger age. You don't necessarily have to do anything wild. It's just preparing yourself for that time when I'm going to be on the ice more often, and my body needs to have a plan for how we're going to approach that. I want to ask you a couple things, because you've had some pretty unique experiences for a female goalie in your lifetime. One of them being going to play in Kazakhstan at the FISU games for Team Canada, the University Team Canada. And I just want to know, like, what that felt like to go to Calgary and be part of that development camp, because you were out there for their summer development camp with all the national team players and the best players from the CIS, and just go through, how you felt you were prepared for that, or how it felt when you got there. And then we'll kind of come back to like going to Kazakhstan and what that was like.
So actually, like when I look back on it, it's all still like so surreal. I remember that Riggs, my coach at the time, he kind of suggested that it might happen. You were kind of on the list, and I actually didn't really put much thought into it. I didn't want to get my hopes up for something that may or may not happen. So at the time, it was kind of out of my control. I just needed to consistently play well, perform. And if there was going to be an opportunity for me, it was going to be based off those performances. So when it came in, I think I actually had to do a double take. Like they want me to go to Calgary for a development camp. And he's like, yeah, like potentially for the FISU games, it's going to be kind of a bit of a tryout. And I actually think that's when I contacted you and said I wanted to do goalie sessions throughout the summer and stay sharp throughout the summer.
Yep.
Because typically I didn't get out on the ice a lot in the summer. But it wasn't until I kind of got that you're actually going. And then it was excitement, but it was more, okay, now it's time to get down to business. Now it's time to really train hard. Me and another teammate, Rachel Marriott, we were running the beep test together. We were training pretty hard, both on and off the ice, just to be able to put our best foot forward when we went there. And not that we weren't prepared before, but when you're given an opportunity like that, you want to make the most of it. So I think I was driving to Waterloo. I was living at home for the summer at the time, and probably coming to Waterloo 1-2 days a week to get on the ice. I think shinny once a week and a goalie session once a week. Mm-hmm. Enough to definitely train for it, but not to overdo it at the same time.
Yep. So, and what was the gap between getting that notice that, hey, you're going to go to Calgary and do this, and then actually going to Calgary? Like, how long did you have to prepare or wrap your mind around what was happening?
I think I found out like right around when the season was ending. Like, I think just after playoffs had finished. It was kind of shortly thereafter. So enough time that I didn't really take too much time off between the season and getting prepared for Calgary. But our staff typically likes us to have at least a month off to kind of recover from the season. Takes a bit of a toll on our bodies.
Yep.
But enough to stay sharp and not just lounge around for a month.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the challenges, I think, is, when an opportunity presents itself, you have to weigh. I mean, that's one that you don't turn down almost, but you have to weigh what it is that that gives you in return for what you're going to put into it, right?
Yeah.
And that's a unique opportunity that not a lot of, especially goalies. I mean, there was only 2 of you that got to go, right? So
yeah.
And that's once every 2 years.
I think it's every 2 years.
Every 2 years. And so in a 4-year playing career, you're only going to get that. And there's 66 goalies across the country that are capable of starting games. So it's an opportunity. You don't say, maybe next time.
No. Well, and as a young female, as a hockey player, as a kid growing up, it was always, I knew as a female that I wasn't going to play in the NHL. I faced that reality pretty quick.
Yeah.
But the way I worded it was, I want to wear a Team Canada jersey in a game. Mm-hmm. And that's the way I worded it always growing up. I want to wear a Team Canada jersey.
Yeah.
And so when I was given that opportunity, I wasn't going to let that one go.
No doubt. So let's go to that. Let's talk about, you put on a practice jersey when you get out to Calgary, and it's I don't know if it's USports or Team Canada, but you're in the Team Canada facility out there, and like it just has to feel special, even if you didn't have that goal as a kid of putting on the Hockey Canada jersey. But for you had written something down that said, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I want to do. My ultimate goal is to put one of these on. When you got to do that, whether it was the team photo or the first time you put that on to compete, what was going through your mind in that particular instance? Or when you walked into the dressing room for the first game in Kazakhstan or whatever it was, and you saw that jersey and you're like, wow, that's my name or my number on a Hockey Canada jersey.
Oh, better than a kid at Christmas.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of when it kind of all kind of, I don't know, not sank in, but you're like, you know what? Maybe I am a half decent goalie, and clearly I'm here for a reason. And it was still a tryout per se, so you still got to put your best foot forward. But I think that's kind of when I realized that all the work leading up to this had paid off.
Yeah.
Those early morning 5 a.m. workouts before going to school, and then going to school for a full day, and then coming home, eating dinner, getting in the car to drive to Waterloo to practice for 2 hours, and getting home at midnight to wake up at 5 a.m. the next day to go train again. Yeah. I think that's kind of when it all kind of came full circle, and you're like, hard work does pay off. Like I I'm here for a reason, and still have to make the most of the opportunity.
Yeah, and there are those little moments where you're reminded why you did all the work or why you're doing all the work to get where you want to go. And it can be something simple or it can be something big like that, where you're like, wow, like I've created this by doing all the things that I've done to get here. And the regular season can be a grind in the university loop, and there's breaks in school. You got school and all kinds of stuff going on. This is like a concentrated moment of, all right, time to put all of the things that I've done for 15 years of being a goalie, or 20 years, into this one opportunity. So I think it's important because nerves and feelings are part of being human. But how you deal with those or acknowledge them, and then what they give you as far as performance, is so important. And I think, you said it before, and you were always you're pretty laid back just in your approach, like just go through it, go out and do what I can do my best, and things are going to happen. What did you feel, the first time that you stepped on the ice in Calgary and knew that there was going to be national team players coming down to shoot on you or something? What was going through your head just from a mental perspective?
So the first time we hit the ice, we just kind of had a team skate, a bit of a team practice per se. Nervous energy was definitely very high. But like we talked about before, is there's always a bit of, so now as opposed to, I don't know, the best player on your team, you have one player that can really shoot the puck on your team. Now every player on the ice is that one player.
Yep.
So there's no freebies anymore. There's no shots where you can just stand there. Every shot's a great shot.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a bit of that adjustment period in that first practice where you're like, whoa, like these girls can play.
Right.
But at the same time, that was almost a little bit motivating. It was a little bit of a challenge at first, because now every shot's a great shot, and just, there was no freebies. There was no just belly basket shots.
Right. Nobody's throwing muffins at you anymore.
No more muffins. But it was almost, with that came eventually the confidence, and you settle in, you get into a routine. But I definitely think once that nervous energy left, it was the confidence that, you know what, you're here for a reason. You're good enough to be here, and you're capable of keeping the puck out of the net.
Mm-hmm. And nerves, what I always say is, it's just reminding you that this is a big moment in time. And that's all it is. It doesn't mean that, all the work you've done or everything goes out the window. It's just, hey, this is what you did all that work for. This is the opportunity you earned to be here. And that's nerves remind you that, yeah, this is what I've done it all for. That's why I'm here.
It means it's important and you care.
That's right. That's exactly it. So what do you do? You go to Calgary, you do all that stuff. It's kind of a tryout. And then you come back and you start into the next season. And when do you find out that you're going to Kazakhstan? And what does that feel like? Like you had to leave your season, right, to go and play. So that's, something that maybe wasn't thought about in the beginning. So then you got some feelings around that, like I'm leaving my team and stuff. So just go through that process of finding out, okay, I've got the spot. Now I've got to prepare for going to a tournament where it's do or die pretty well every game. And I'm going halfway around the world. So.
Yeah. So I think it was a few weeks to a month after Calgary that the full team list was sent out. But being as there was only 2 goalies in Calgary, they pulled both of us aside and said, that they would like both of us to go in Calgary, which is kind of a sense of relief. You just knew you kind of secured your spot at the end of camp in Calgary, and could kind of start planning ahead, thinking ahead, because likely at the time what I was thinking is kind of performance up to that point would probably dictate quite a bit of who would be playing what games and how playing time would work. Mm-hmm. So yes, you've made the team, but I'd still like to play.
Right.
I'm not one that really enjoys the bench all that much. So it was kind of like a little bit of a sigh, but you knew there's still work to be done. And once that list came out, it was nice to know that a teammate had also made it. Just makes it a little bit easier. Not that it wasn't a great group of girls, it was, but it's always nice to kind of have someone to lean on a little extra in case you needed it, and just a familiar face.
Yep, for sure.
So yeah, we pretty much went right into our season, and in the beginning, just saying, it was a little tough because, well, it wasn't tough, but you didn't know how your teammates were going to respond, whether it was going to be kind of jealousy, whether they were going to be supportive. But they couldn't have been more supportive, which was awesome. And then the worry kind of kicks in that we're getting near the end of our season. Mm-hmm. We're in a push to win as many games as we can to secure our spot and put us in a good position for playoffs.
Yep.
So you're a little nervous to leave, knowing I think we missed 2-3 games. Which every game at the end of the season, those are big games. You want to win those games for sure. Yep. So even when we're away, every player that was away, they're all following their team. They're watching their games on their phones.
Right.
Everyone's checking in on their teams back at home. And I know at the conclusion of the tournament, some players were flying back and were trying to make a game like the next day, which is like a 13-hour time change.
Yep.
And, but yeah, Reegs couldn't have been more supportive either. He was going to be there with us, but he had a little one due during the time we were gone. So he was definitely really happy for us, really supportive. There was no chance I think he was going to let us stay and not go for those opportunities. Yeah. So, yeah. But getting back was a bit of a struggle.
Back from Kazakhstan?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Why was that? Why was it a struggle?
I think when we landed, we came right to the rink, and the girls were practicing, and me and Dewey were like zombies.
Right.
It's 13-hour time change, and I think it was about like 16 hours of travel with layovers.
Wow.
So we were zombies walking into the rink, and we thought we were going to practice, and we got home pretty
quick. Of course
quick.
You did.
I guess just the look of us, we got sent home real quick. But it probably took probably about 2 weeks to feel normal coming back.
Yeah.
And what research actually says is for every hour of time difference, it takes about a day to adjust.
There you go. Yeah. That's pretty crazy. So you came back and still had games to play.
Yeah, we had a few games left.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about, a lot of goalies now they have that high school hockey stuff going on at the same time that the team's getting into playoffs. And you kind of had, it was a different situation, but it was similar. You had a other opportunity that you really wanted to pursue, but it may have impacted your team's ability to make the playoffs. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. Luckily, Rhymes was there, and she was able to carry the team through that stretch. But you come back, and you're kind of like, okay, I want to play, but your body's not necessarily up to it yet. So how does that feel coming back? Because you're on such a high. You go to this amazing experience in this incredible tournament, and you get a silver medal, and then you come back and you're like, whoa, I'm a little I'm a little out of it here. Like, but I want to play. How does that feel? Do you feel like you let your team down? Do you feel like, maybe, I don't know what's going through your head when you're trying to navigate that?
I think for me, it was kind of, you get back and you're not really sure, not where you stand, but kind of Rhymes definitely carried the team through those games for sure. And you're like, well, she's on a hot streak. I just got back. I'm jet lagged. Probably shouldn't be playing, but really want to play and get back in with the team, start playing, and see some ice. But then at the same time, Rhymes has been doing amazing carrying the team. So like that's a tough decision for a coach to make too.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to get my legs back, and so I think it was a little bit of uncertainty at first.
Okay.
Am I going to get the go ahead? Am I going to sit a few games and kind of see how it goes? I think you and the coaching staff at the time, like the way it kind of worked is if the goalie was hot, you're going to let him play, which is a good way to go, I think.
Yep.
And Rhymes was hot, so I think she got maybe another start or two when I got back, which definitely a little jealous at first. I'm eager to get going, but it made sense, and I needed a little more time, a few more practices, a few more skates to get back in with the team and kind of mesh back in.
And it goes back to what you said about the stuff, outside of, I guess there's stuff outside your control and stuff that you can control. And you're, that's I can't think of the right word, but like, it's something you didn't think about when you left or when you accepted that opportunity. You weren't like, I might lose my starting job, right? You're not thinking that way, but then you come back and there's a consequence. You weren't thinking about the travel and how much it was going to crush your body, and not think about any of that stuff. And I think it's a really good thing to hear that, accept what's within your control and continue to do what you do and do it your best, and then take the opportunities that come to you. So you got an opportunity to go to Kazakhstan, and you took it and you did your best. And then there's some unexpected consequences of that. Your goalie partner steps up and plays really well. Your body's not fully there because you've had to travel so much, and there's a lot of stuff going on in a short period of time as far as like the ups and downs of playing in a tournament like that. So it's a really good lesson for a young goalie, especially who's thinking about opportunities that come along or things that they can do, and like, how do I weigh those out, and maybe a little bit more depth into what could be the consequence of this, and am I okay with that? Like, it's normal. You're competitive. You want to play, so you're going to be a little bit jealous that your goalie partner's taken over, but she's doing good and the team's doing good, so like, you can't be that upset about that.
Exactly.
But I want to play, and that's what makes good players good, is that they want to play. But also understanding that, I made a choice to go do this. This is a consequence of that, out of my control. I got what I wanted, and now I have to find my way back into this other scenario.
And as a goalie, I think it's really important to just control the controllables. There's going to be things that are out of your control. For like, coach has the say in who's starting. That's out of your control. All you can do is show up and play when you're told to play.
Yep. And that's why preparing the same every day, and knowing in your heart that you've done everything you can do to be ready for that opportunity, versus being disappointed. It's okay to be disappointed, but don't let that affect how you prepare in the 2 minutes right after being disappointed, because your disappointment's acknowledging like, I wanted that, I didn't get it, now what do I do? I got to keep going. I got to keep working. Maybe there's something I can add or something I can do different to get there. Maybe I should ask my coach, why? But there's always something you can do, and trust that you're doing enough to get those opportunities. You did enough to get there. You can get back. You can get that opportunity again. And so you ended up winning a silver medal in Kazakhstan. And I'm sure there's like, you wanted so badly to put that jersey on, and you got that opportunity, and then you go. And for people who don't know, the FISU games is university teams from all around the world, except for Russia puts their national team in, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So they blow everybody out of the water. That's just the way it is. And you guys went, and you split the net pretty evenly with Lamenta from Guelph, and you played the semifinals, right? And beat, who did you guys play in the semifinals?
I don't even remember off the top of my head.
Was it a European country?
I believe so.
Yeah, like a Latvia or something. I can't remember either, but but you play in the semifinals. There's some really weak teams, and then there's, the US is good, Canada's good, Russia's good. I don't know who, like maybe Sweden or Finland kind of falls in there, just kind of like the pecking order of national programs, right? And so you play the semifinal game, and you go to the gold medal game, and you know who you're playing, and you know what they're capable of. You've gotten all of the things that you wanted. You got to play, you got to wear the jersey, you're in the gold medal game in this tournament halfway across the world, and you lose. So like, what does that feel like? Because now you have perspective on it. If I had asked you this the day of, you'd have been pretty bummed out. I know that. But what did you feel like? I got a silver medal. That's something that not very many people are ever going to get to do in their life. But you didn't win the thing that you went there to win.
I think at this point in time, I can look back and just see kind of, it's not even just that single game, just the experience as a whole. So when I look back, I see the group of girls that we have a bond with forever. We still have group chats to this day, and you see their posts on Instagram or Facebook, whatever it may be, and you can chuckle because you still see their personalities.
Right.
I may never see them face to face, but just their posts, pictures, things like that, I can see their personalities, and I just get a good laugh.
Yeah.
Where I see our training staff put together kind of a little bit of a pump-up video before our final game, just with the memories from Calgary, from our time in Kazakhstan, and just how emotional that was.
Mm-hmm.
I can see when we played China, and it was sold out. Parents had to buy tickets like 3 days in advance because there's already talks that game was going to sell out. And I will never play in front of as many people as I did that game.
Right.
And just you can't even hear yourself think. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, like we lost the gold medal game, but that's when I look back on that experience, that's the last thing I think of.
Yep.
And we had this chant we do in the dressing room before we'd hit the ice, and it was one of the French girls, Mello, and she'd be yelling in French, and we'd just repeat what she said, and no one knew what we were saying. And it's just it's those things, it's those little memories that you're gonna take away, and I think that's what you take away from a season. Those are the things that I take away from my 4 years at Waterloo. It's kind of those little moments. Yeah, we had a great playoff run with Waterloo, and yeah, we did this and that, but it's kind of the group of people and those little special memories that you share with those people.
I'm telling you, there's not many who've packed more into a 4-year USports career than Sluys managed to. And it's no surprise to me that she's taken her athletic talents and commitment to community to another level since graduating, now working as a firefighter in the Greater Toronto region. Thanks again to Steph for joining me on this episode. On the next episode, I catch up with goaltender Terry Martin, who has one of the most unique, fun, and rewarding hockey journeys I've had the pleasure to come across. What started as a hockey adventure similar to most, growing up playing goal in rural Canada, turned into recruitment to the University of Nevada in Las Vegas to play roller hockey, There, he would make the jump from wheels back to blades, helping that school's ice hockey program earn Division I status. He didn't abandon the wheels altogether, though, continuing to play for the UNLV roller hockey squad, as well as suiting up for Team Canada in international roller hockey competition. This story also has an emotional twist, which led Terry to the University of Waterloo, where, as recently as this past season, he played on the same team as his younger brother Trevor. That part of the story alone is something you're not going to want to miss. And I guarantee that anyone who loves the game of hockey is going to get something out of hearing how this one turns out. So, until then, take care of yourselves out there, and thanks again for listening to the SHFT Hockey Podcast.